This program was brought to you by Koller Institute of Venture at Tel Aviv University.
Let me call up the first leader, who is? Elise. Thank you. And please, the group leader, introduce themselves.
I am much shorter than Jessa. We'll see. Hopefully you can hear me. So I'm Elise Alvarez Garrido. I'm I'm at Georgia State University in the U.S. and my team was this project on the electromagnetic shaping electrons in the electronic microscope, right? I got it almost right. And we were talking about how to get this technology to the market, and we were fortunate because in our group we had the engineer that has come up with the technology, a person in the industry that knows a lot about this technology, a former private equity investor. So it was a very complete group. And many of the things that we said in the morning resonated in the discussion, but I think things that were new were, one of the things that came up was the need to get some industry expertise. If we are to bridge this gap between having the university invention and making this a product that the company can buy and implement, we need to push on both directions, right? The industry is not going to go all the way back to the invention, and the university has to take this a little bit forward. And for that, you need industry expertise to be able to move in the right direction, because there is a lot of possible avenues, and for that, maybe you need a startup that attracts former employees or something like that. Another thing that was apparent was there is a competition here for the attention of the inventor, right? The inventor is a university professor, has a lot of things to do like that are related to academia, and unless that's going to be given up, there needs to be a way that this can coexist with the startup, and also there are multiple projects multiple avenues that could be taken. So there is a competition for attention, and I think one of the steps, if we are to move this forward to the next level, is to clarify some of these choices that the university has to make. And then, how am I with time? No, that was basically it. Like so yes, that was it.
Thank you very much. Group number 2, Mikaelson, all the way from Hong Kong, in a live performance, first time in Israel.
All right, so hello everyone. We had we discussed about the project conducted by Dr. Ina Slutsky. She developed a kind of a cure for Alzheimer. And the discussion actually focused on how to market the thing, because basically our understanding is that the science has been done, and the key difficulties lie in the marketing part. And in that, we have two problems. The first one is awareness. The second one is incentives. So the first one, we actually thought about how to propose some kind of matching mechanism for scientists to meet potential buyers, potential investors, potential collaborators, or even angels. And we give detailed suggestions. So here we said there could be many cross-boundary opportunities, because sometimes you haven't got a chance to hear about this technology, and maybe there are investors who will be interested. So there should be some mechanism to allow such communications. And also you can get, for example, big data from device makers. Maybe they're interested in your kind of technology, but now they just make this all these very civilian kind of level of devices. Or you can also talk to business people to have this business acumen instilled into your business plan, so that investors can have a better understanding of the project. Finally, maybe even lay people, like the SETI project. you can have people, individual peer-to-peer kind of system to help you to develop this awareness thing. The second issue is about incentives. So the first idea is to have propose a kind of ecosystem so that the government can support the buyouts. That's a very old kind of idea, because many years ago, Spanish government actually proposed a price to support people, whoever develops the technology to protect raw food on ships will get that price. Actually, someone did. That's the invention of the canned food. But eventually, the Spanish government didn't pay for that. But in the future, I think there are opportunities that governments can support such kind of buyouts. So there's a lot of kind of advantages to have this. Also, we talked about breaking the projects into stages, because again, the investors, they do not understand the potential of this. So maybe over different stages, we're able to show some progress. And finally, there's a gap between what you have and what you want. The idea is to propose different, for example, there are several solutions. One is benchmark technologies. If someone already are successful in getting funding, and then probably you can match whatever you get and try to persuade potential investors to invest. And then finally, partner with patient society and foundations, because these people, they have incentives. From what we heard in that particular project, actually the needed money is not a lot. With just $15 million, she could have developed this idea to save the society $15 billion. So if you're able to get this kind of seed money from different sources, actually you can shorten the gap you have. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 4, Jorge. Good. All the way from Germany.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction. Thank you very much for the invitation. Our group focused on Dalit's point on osteoarthritis, an expression that I don't use too often, actually, in particular not in English. So, as you can see, this project has some typical features of those that we discussed this morning, where the question was how to bridge the gap between actually what has been discovered, what has been initiated on the researchers level, basically on the academic level, and what actually can be then done by industry. So what actually is this valley of death that was described quite extensively this morning, that is very typical here. It's a real challenge here. So we have a product that has a patent that is, so in that sense, in a not very early stage. And now the main discussion we had in our group was how and let's say what are the pros and what are the cons of different options. Let's first of all, which financing options are available. Second of all, what are the pros and cons of those options that are available. There were a couple of creative ideas that came out in the discussion. In particular with respect to the question where knee surgeries, knee applications, which are probably some of the most promising, also business-wise most promising applications, how they can be used with respect, for example, to Department of Defense, potentially to football. So basically questions of where these injuries happen most. A question was on is venture capital available for this? Another one is industry financing available for this? And certainly is also university marketing available for this. And so we saw a lot of pros and cons, not a quite clear-cut solution for this, but certainly illustrating, highlighting very much the key effect that I mentioned before about the gap between academia and the business side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 5, Sophie, who happens to wear 2 hats at least. She's a leader, and then she's going to be in the panel. So, okay. Leader of the leaders, right?
Yeah, great. I know that since this morning. So our project, our group discussed, and now I have to take a look, discussed the project on electrostatically formed nanowires, the projects that will teach computers to count to 3 rather than to 2, so you remember. Basically, we tried to understand what the nature of the project was, how well it was developed, and it appeared that we were also discussing a project that was approaching the valley of death, which is not only applicable to pharma companies, but also to that kind of company. So the basic research sounded promising, but then a lot of work had to be done before the project could be picked up by typical investors in early stage ventures. So a lot of technological de-risking had to be done before typical sources of funding could be approached. And then the question is, who is going to pay for that de-risking? And the basic question was, should we already team up with commercial parties, or should we go to other sources of funding? And basically the overall idea was that having the soft money from the university would probably be the best way to go. So there I learned that this university is extending up to $1 million per project to get it from basic science to more prototyping, etc. One of the problems there was also that, you need to have your products tested in fabs, and this is a costly process, so we did not discuss that, but on a personal note, probably we need government that invest in infrastructure that can help prototyping and help proof of concepts, because that's an area, this is too big for individual universities, might be relevant for multiple research units across the country. And once you pass that stage, then you become much more interesting for commercial partners. So basically, that was it. Thank you.
Next group, Allegra. All the way from the UK.
Hi. So my name is Allegra. I'm a faculty member at the University of Cambridge Judge Business School, where I'm also the director of the MPhil in Management. And we've had fascinating discussions in the team back there. We're looking at Noam Chamran's deep sequencing idea. And I think our discussions can actually be articulated in 2 different categories. First one, we looked at, basically we said this is a very interesting case, it's a great idea, and it's obviously a very successful lab coming up with great ideas, and potentially this is also a wonderful, a great point of care product. But the idea, the problem we had in our group was that the researchers' priorities clearly were not to be the founder of an organization, clearly were not to become the CEO of a company. Clearly the researchers' priorities were to continue to teach, continue to do research, come up with patents, come up with ideas, really not get involved with the nitty-gritty of running an organization. So the question becomes, and of course, I mean, as we all know, and someone pointed this out repeatedly in the group, we should never underestimate the difficulties of starting up a company, particularly in the life sciences. So never, ever underestimate how difficult it is. So the recommendation at this point was, you should definitely pair up with someone you trust, someone who knows you well, someone who's willing to basically take the lead in the organization, and you can continue doing research and doing all those different things. The problem being that we can't actually go out there and, as a general recommendation, approach every researcher who's in the same position and say, go find a friend, and found a company with a friend. So we shifted this first issue by basically saying that this is a platform issue, and this is a platform situation, not necessarily the type of platform we're discussing when Noam very eloquently presented his ideas earlier today. We believe that the issue is that we need to be able to connect researchers who really want to focus on teaching and doing research on the one hand and have wonderful ideas and wonderful products or technologies on their shelf, as Noam described them, on the one hand, and also connect entrepreneurs on the other hand. So people who really have... So, sorry, I thought it was someone objecting to what I was saying. Okay, So on the other hand, you have entrepreneurs who are really willing, who have the drive to start up a company, who are really willing to take this very heavy position as founder and CEO of the organization on, but necessarily those two worlds do not necessarily collide. The researchers on one hand, the labs on one hand, and the entrepreneurs on the other hand. So we came up with this idea that it'd be great to have a nexus connecting those two worlds, and the technology transfer unit of our respective universities could do the trick. However, it's not really their job. This is not really what they're set up for. The Color Institute could actually do this as in the setting. In a setting similar to the conference we've had today, or other type of connecting things. What we agreed on is that we needed someone who spoke multiple languages. We needed someone to connect the two worlds, who was able to communicate. The people in the Nexus would be able to communicate with the researchers on the one hand and with the entrepreneurs on the other hand. Revolution starts with language, and this is really one of the conclusions we reached. And then the second theme we discussed more briefly, we basically looked at Noam's very eloquent presentation once again gave us a series of timelines, a series of ideas, a series of technologies to be developed in the short term, long term, medium term, and a series of visions around that. And the question became, should you articulate one single organization with a single overarching vision and the declination of different, trickling of different ideas and projects around that, or are you happy to set up a multiplicity of smaller startups around the technologies? And we came to the conclusion very briefly that what's really important when you're starting up an organization around, particularly in the life sciences again, is the idea of focus, the idea of coherence in your offering, and basically came up with the conclusion that it might be better in the first instance, in this particular case, to have a single vision that is actually articulated in a family of technologies that have some commonalities, and develop that around a launching product. Have I missed out anything? Is there anything else we could? Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Number 8, Brett. Representing the United States of America. All right.
Alrighty, so hopefully I'll be able to read my handwriting so I can actually communicate to you all what we discussed.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so our group focused on Danny Mikaelson's invention around Alzheimer's disease and looking at a new molecule that really has not been investigated up to this point, primarily because a lot of people, when they do the research, they focus on the pathology or the family genealogy as to whether people are likely to develop Alzheimer's. And with Danny's research, what he has identified is that there is a marker that's basically present in 60% of the people who have Alzheimer's disease. And so he started looking at this molecule and trying to determine if this really is something that's leading to Alzheimer's, and if so, is there an antibody that can be developed to basically get rid of Alzheimer's? Excuse me. So much of our conversation really kind of was oriented around the need to raise money, for his concept. He's basically already proven the first generation, and he's looking to do a proof of concept for the second generation for his invention. And so we talked about ways that he could get this money through crowdfunding. And we thought Alzheimer's was especially interesting for this type of an innovation because Alzheimer's really kind of creates a community of people for the family members who are affected, by this disease. Obviously, the person who has Alzheimer's really can't do a whole lot, for themselves, and so the family really becomes very important for these individuals. And so Alzheimer's kind of has this natural community that gets created, which is really very important for crowdfunding to be able to succeed. And so we talked about, kind of the importance of being able to reach out to the people in these communities and possibly getting them to invest in some of these innovations. at the same time, we realized that a lot of these innovations really are still very risky, and it might be useful to actually pull together a portfolio of innovations around Alzheimer's and basically present that to the individuals who are part of the community. And so we thought, it might be useful to have a platform that really brings together some of these innovations around specific types of disease and then presents them to various crowdfunding audiences. One thing that we thought would be really important is that we would need to have professionals who basically specialized in helping the inventors to be able to get these innovations out there. So obviously we don't want to have the scientists, kind of working through the crowdfunding and the social media and all of that. So we'd need to have professionals who basically specialize in this type of funding to kind of do that work for them. And also we'd have to identify, influential people who would be able to really get the message out there about the importance of supporting these types of innovations. And then also determining the strategy for moving forward for the inventors. And then a second piece that we talked about, and we spent quite a bit of time discussing this issue as well, was really what we would offer, to some of the people who were investing in these kind of early stage innovations around Alzheimer's disease. And one of the things that we discussed at length was really whether we would want to promise people that they would be able to be one of the first to essentially test the antibody or be a part of the clinical trials for these types of disease in exchange for the donations that they were making through the crowdfunding. And of course, we discussed the fact that there are legalities that could surround that. Obviously, there may be some issues with promising people that they could be a part of a clinical trial if they donate to the crowdfunding campaign. And then, of course, the ethics around that would also be an issue. But, we think that there would be a lot of potential to crowdfund these types of innovations and to be able to raise the money that's needed to get some of these technologies into the marketplace. And then, excuse me, ultimately, down the road, we would want to be able to take these innovations that we've been able to raise the money for and get them tested, and then hopefully entice big pharma to be interested in actually developing the drugs for these particular innovations. So I get everything from our table? Cover everything? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Eva, all the way from Germany, also.
Yes, hi. I'm Eva, faculty member, University of Düsseldorf in Germany, and director of the Center for Entrepreneurship there. I was on the team discussing the project by Dr. Yuri Nevo on the smartphone-based platform for monitoring psychiatric disorders. And as often sitting together discussing the startups, we at first got a bit lost in some of the details and discussed in depth what are the pros, cons, how does it actually work? And Yuri explained to us the stage they're in at the moment with this project. So they basically have a working application. They're working together with psychiatrists, and what they need now is more users to show that it actually works and that they have efficient indicators to forecast certain disorders. So that's where they are at the moment. And it's basically a typical situation for a startup. They're in a stage where they still need to focus on the science. They still need to gain the competitive advantage over others in the same field, showing that they have really the great indicators and a working concept. So that led us then to discuss basically two main topics. One was what is the correct timing for collaboration with industry partners. So they are, of course, working already closely together with psychiatrists, but when is a good time to also go into industry, maybe talking to or bringing in, potentially even bringing in industry, like insurance companies, corporate venture capital units from insurance companies, in shaping the business model, in developing a targeted communication for them, because they will in the end be the ones who pay for such a service, or largely pay for such a service. And the second big topic was what kind of money and at what time should would be appropriate. So similar to, I think, Sophie's group, we talked about the difference between VC money, large VC money, and more sort of patient money, patient capital from academic sources. And they said that at the moment they need to have a bit more patience to develop the science, and that would be a good opportunity for them, or help their development. We learned about programs, about a program in France, a staged model where startups can get at first 200,000 as a grant, and then in a second and third stage large loans that will also give them patience to develop that, and to then be positioned for the next big step being potentially a VC finance and so on. And last, even though those were the two main topics, we very, very briefly in the last time talked about the team, and here I've got similar have a similar situation as in a lot of science startups, that we have science-focused people, and that for the next stage it will be important to bring in business or people who are focused on running the business and bringing it forward, and bringing in ideas on how to develop the company. So that's it.
Elise there. All the way.
Good afternoon. I'm Elise from the Hebrew University, the Finance Department, the Jerusalem Business School, and it was our pleasure to discuss today the project by Professor Nathan Intrator, Advanced Brain Signal Processing, Elephants, Earthquake, and Brain Research. So we learned and discussed even more application than initially presented that can be done using this technology. We discussed the trade-off between focus versus variety of products, and the trade-off of technology platform development versus taking advantage of potential opportunities with respect to the application. We suggested potential avenues to explore to deal with this challenge. Open source was one of them, Find Go-To Entrepreneur was another, Ranking Project was another one. We find that the project was fascinating, and we hope that the researchers will be able to implement the technology toward the area of health application, which is, I think, or I believe, his ultimate goal, and we wish him all the best.
This program was brought to you by Koller Institute of Venture at Tel Aviv University.